I'll do my thing.
You ask whatever questions, I answer the best that I can, man.
There are cars that you see in your life and you're like, that's a Halo car, that's a unicorn car. And then you find out that the owner is just as cool as the car. And when you just meet those people, you're like, fuck, dude, I want to hang out. You want to hang out? Turns out, life brought John closer to me. And what car do we have behind you?
It's a 1990 BMW M3.
You've had this car a long time.
It's gonna be 18 years.
18 years.
18 years, yeah.
So tell me the story of this car.
Well, initially we were looking for, I was looking for an E36.
Yeah.
I grew up kind of, E36 M3 was my dream car as a teenager. I spent a lot of time on the forums on S14 and Rev Limited and Bimmer forums, and E36 I felt was going to be the perfect package. E30 kind of felt a little out of reach in some aspect. Passed up on 2 E36s that didn't pan out, and then this popped up in the Bay Area. Sight unseen purchase, actually, believe it or not, yeah.
So you drive down, fly down, you drive
actually,
it back?
I was going to school, and my dad flew down, and he drove it up.
High five to your dad for being the coolest fucking dad in the world.
You know, the car grew up with me through the stages. It's weird to say, but yeah, it very much did, you know.
When you got it, what was on it?
It had tan interior. It was a stock car, other than it had 18s on it, believe it or not.
It's a big wheel for an E30.
But it's a huge wheel. I ended up selling them to a buddy of mine that put them on his E36, and I bought E38 basket weaves. They're called Style 5, so I painted them bronze, and I ran it with bought H&R race springs. That's what I did. H&R race springs with Bilsteins. That's what I ran for a while. Yeah, for 18s. I keep going. 18s is a little too big.
Sebrings.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's mint, but I'm sure it didn't start this way.
It's one of those things where we always want to have all the money in the world so you can do everything you have in your brain. And so for me, I think it was a blessing that I never did. Now it's at a stage where I feel is more mature in some aspects, but it was very much like little tidbits. The goal initially was to turn the car into a track car. Like when I first got it, the goal was I'm gonna track this thing. And as I've owned it longer, the more difficult it became, and so I still had the image of wanting to make the car look like a race car, but I wanted it to be a street car. As much as, you know, we go out and have fun on back roads and whatnot, it's not a track car by any means. So yeah, it started out as an idea, and it was very slow rolling, and pieces got put together, and I swear it's just like, when things meant to be, it's meant to be, because the right parts came at me at the right time when I had the money and I was able to throw down, or parts came incomplete and I pieced it together because that's what I could afford. So about 2017 is when two buddies, they were picking at me for the longest time because the car had a repaint at some point. The previous owner repainted it, and when I finally was able to get a color code from Westco, it was a Volkswagen red color.
No
so they repainted
way.
it Volkswagen red. So the car had hazing on it though, oxidized paint, so it was like it would come out with pinkish sometimes if I didn't detail it all the time. Sean Edwards and Jeff Miller were guys that I met through, believe it or not, through Tumblr, and they would paint cars up in Arlington, and I was always like, if I get my car painted, I want those guys to do it, but I never thought it could happen, and finally they helped me lift the whole paint off the pedestal is what we called it. And so in 2017 we took it down, took off all the old paint, and then repainted it in its original Brilliant Rock color.
We also have a small story, or a small connection here. Wheels. First of all, are you good? Can you say the wheel sizes that you're running? Okay, so, what are you running?
So these are actually stock BBS RS212s. I haven't altered them by any means. So they made them in the 90s for, like, if you bought an E24 6 Series gray market car, it had the original slant lip BBS RS212s, but a BMW logo.
Wow.
So these are exactly as they came from BBS, other than the quarter cap. Those are add-ons.
Add-ons.
Yeah.
And then the way you got these wheels was actually from a mutual friend of ours. Paul, if you're watching, these are your old wheels, pal. I'm sure you already know that. I actually saw these wheels in person in like 2002 when I threw a party at a local bar in Costa Mesa, and Paul pulls up in his green M3 with these wheels, and I go, whose cool car is that in the parking lot? And then sure enough, that night I meet Paul. Turns out Paul and I become some of the closest friends I've ever had in my life. And then he starts DJing and repping the brand that I created. It's like crazy thing. And then now I move to Washington, I meet John, and here are Paul's wheels. I'm getting goosebumps. What a crazy world of events. What are the size of the wheels?
They're 17 by 8.5.
All around square?
All around square.
Wow. That's amazing.
I prefer to run square setup, so I kept them as is.
Suspension, what do you got?
Ground control, coilovers.
All around?
Yeah.
Arms, did you do anything like that?
Not on the front. I run, with the RSs, I run a bump steer spacer from VAC Motorsports. The rear, I had all the bushings are AKG, stiffen up the ride, and thanks, man. That's Forrest. So the rears on E30s never had adjustability for camber or toe, and so I have a weld-in adjustability to allow a little bit movement with the wheels and have it sitting how I like to.
Brakes.
Brakes are stock.
Wow.
And it's funny. So this is a big thing, and it's ate away at me for years. I've always wanted to upgrade to like a bigger brake kit, but I want, it's either Brembo or AP that I wanted, and the issue with a lot of the bigger brake kits is they limit the sizing. So if you're okay running 17s and bigger, you could run a nice big brake kit. If you want to run 16s, which is what I swapped to, I'm limited. So I think what's going to happen is some kind of a custom kit through AP eventually. But
mini caliper.
To be honest though, good pads in this car, I've never had the brakes fade on me.
Body kit, all factory?
All factory.
That rear wing, no changes? Front lip?
Yeah, so it has a Euro spec front bumper, so there's no side markers. The bottom splitter, it's a splitter / under tray, and that's from a Sport Evolution. So this actually goes in or out depending on how you adjust the screws. I run full aggressive because visually I just like it. And then I have the Sport Evo brake ducts. Usually you have fog lights for a street car.
Yeah.
I have Euro front kidneys, which the Euro kidneys, it's silly. It's just right here has a little bit more of an aggressive line above it, but it changes the whole look of the car. Sport Evolution grill, which is a little bit thinner to allow better airflow in. And then I run ceiling around to help kind of keep the air going in through to the actual intake.
Where it needs to go.
Yeah. So it is a S14 2.3 liter, which is a US spec motor. At one point when I was, 21 or something like that, I had the valve covers painted gold, and it's been a plan to go back to most likely crinkle black. One of my all-time, since I was a kid, I wanted to run a carbon airbox that the DTM cars ran, so that's gonna happen eventually. It's something that I've really procrastinated on. As far as changing goes, it's a Sparco strut brace, the MagnaCore wires, and it has a Igio, I believe you call it, chip for ECU chip. Other than that, it's just exhaust work. Nothing internally on the motor has been altered. You know, a lot of guys say they're low on torque, but if you're out high revving on back roads, it's a blast. I love it. I've gone through about 2 different interiors. Obviously the stock tan interior. I ended up running Recaro speed seats for a while before swapping to the SPGs. The black carpeting, obviously, a 4-point roll bar. We had same Jeff and Sean. We were talking about it in our chat for a while, and we finally did a color match on the seats. Which honestly is one of my favorite things. I was so hesitant to do it. I was so nervous about it being just like too much, but I love it.
Steering wheel?
Current steering wheel is a Itavolante 4ML wheel. It was one of the wheels that a lot of the teams ran in Group A racing. So I have a few of these, and it just kind of depends on the mood. We run a Renstall shift knob. Same thing, you know. I've ran every single one of Renstall's shift knobs. This has been my favorite. Oh, I guess these door cards are Euro spec houndstooth. So one of the things that I noticed is a lot of the cars that were racing back in period, they always had these door cards. And in Europe, most M3s came with a houndstooth interior, whereas here we would get, the vinyl. So I sourced these, and these are actually in really good shape. The other thing I added was funny enough, to kind of a tip of the hat to Paul and his E36, Dark Side E36. Yeah. I added the RPM gauge ring years ago.
Yes.
I added that. That's probably been there for about 10 years now. So that's Pirate SpongeBob. He's been guarding the car since 2006.
So he's part of the car now.
At this point,
arguably, he's been in the car longer than this version of your steering wheel.
Yeah, he actually. That's very real. That's funny. That's very real. You know, I never in my life had a vision of building a show car. It was always I want to go enjoy and that's kind of what this was. However, given, you know, when we repainted it, I try to keep it as clean as I can, you know. I take care of that aspect of it. But after the first few rock chips, it really becomes like a thing to kind of show, like, no, it's driven. Yeah, it's definitely something that the most thrill I get is behind the wheel.
Speaking of behind the wheel, should we go for a cruise?
Let's do it.
Much more harsh. It's pretty low, but it's so smooth.
It's stiff. You feel things.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, and it's never bothered me. I enjoy feeling things. I enjoy feeling connected to it, but I worry that as I get older, that it'll become like a thing.
Brakes good. All right, if you guys follow John on Instagram, Slow Progress, you'll notice that his stories are not only very curated, but all his stories are in black and white. He has some color in his stories, like when he shares links of friends or supports stuff. For the most part, the stuff that John puts in his stories are intentional black and white photos from a vibe that he's feeling. And so for today, we're gonna shoot his car in black and white film. As an homage to John, we're doing RPX 25 black and white film, and hopefully the train horn doesn't end up in the film. RPX 25.